Hey everybody, still waiting on my bus here, very close to Clark and Division. I'm trying to take it to Chipotle. Actually there's a Chipotle just up the street, but I want to go to a different one. Dr. Hasseline from Australia, or no, I'm pretty sure it's Australia, recommended that I check out a 1973 movie called Soylent Green, and of course I'd heard of this movie, and most people who are familiar with classic sci-fi movies know what Soylent Green is. Soylent Green is blank. That's the key phrase. I won't spoil it for you if you don't know what Soylent Green is. I won't tell you what it is, but yeah, it's one of those classic sci-fi moments, as they say. I'm just trying to avoid people as I'm waiting for the bus right here. Trying not to get anyone on camera except for myself. Actually, you know, it's not only likely that you know what Soylent Green is if you've seen it, or if you've even heard of it. You know, if all you've seen is Cloud Atlas, then you're going to know what Soylent Green is, because Jim Broadbent says so at one point in the movie. It plays in nicely. This is based on a novel called Make Room! Make Room! Exclamation points included. It's by Harry Harrison, and the film was directed by Robert Fleischer, who directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Fantastic Voyage, and The Boston Strangler prior to this film. And after that, he directed Mr. Majestic, The Jazz Singer with Neil Diamond, Conan the Destroyer, and Ren Sonja. And I haven't seen most of those movies except for Fantastic Voyage. This is only the second of two futuristic movies that I've seen from this year, the other one being Westworld. I believe Westworld was futuristic. Maybe it isn't, but it certainly has a lot of futuristic aspects to it. And I have to say I like this movie a lot better. The movie, of course, stars Charlton Heston. Charlton Heston is a cop whose name is Thorn, very appropriately. His name is Detective Thorn, and he is investigating the murder of a gentleman by the name of William Simonson, who is living in a very, very luxurious apartment building, which is a rarity in this society, because as this movie takes place in 2022, 9 years from now actually, which is still the future, there is tremendous overcrowding and poverty and all kinds of other stuff happening in New York City where he lives. Apparently everyone's grouped in the city as that no one can go to farms. Farms are like illegal. You can't go out in the open. You have to live in a populated city or something like that. I don't understand the logic behind that exactly, except of course there are secrets to be kept. For example, what is Soylent Green exactly? The Soylent Company makes food chips, basically. They're like little squares or discs. You eat them, they provide nutritional value. There's Soylent Red, there's Soylent Yellow, and now the new thing is Soylent Green. So what happens is, Heston is investigating the death of this guy, Simonson, in his apartment. And it's meant to look like a burglary, but Heston's a smart enough guy to realize, oh no, this isn't a burglary. Somebody came along and killed this guy, and the guy apparently wanted to be dead. To be fair, it's not as though he wants to die. It's more like he's accepted the fact that some people want him dead, and he realizes that these are the consequences of the actions that he's taken. And all this, of course, is unclear, but in the scene that happens, you know, I mean, it isn't something that Detective Thorn, Charlton Heston's character, is privy to, but we see it ourselves. Guy comes in and tells him, you know, his time's up. He's like, yeah, I know, and then bam, he's dead. So the question that Thorn is trying to figure out is, who is this guy? Who did he work for, and why did someone want him dead? So, in the meantime, we have, you know, obviously a lot of information as to what's exactly happened in the intervening years between 73 and 2022, and you know, whatever that now is. And so we have, you know, a lot of depictions of what life is like. The Soylents, of course, are meant to be nutritious, and they're sort of a food substitute. These little discs or little squares of nutrient. And food is something of a luxury. So there's a point in which while Thorn is investigating the crime, he finds all this valuable stuff. And in the victim's apartment. He realizes, well, this can't be a real burglary because we've got, you know, liquor here, we've got food, we've got we've got a bar of soap. You never see soap these days, and so this could have been a burglary because this guy would have taken all this valuable stuff. Anyway, when Heston goes and, when Detective Thorn goes and is looking through Simonson's apartment, he, you know, acquires all this stuff, you know, meat and food and things like that, liquor, paper, things like that. So, you know, this is all rare and expensive stuff. And when he gets home, he shows this all to Saul, and they're like, oh, we should have like a meal. So there's this whole sequence in which they prepare a meal for themselves, and Saul does the cooking because he's older and he's more experienced and he knows how this stuff works because it's been years since anyone actually had food to eat, actual real food rather than these Soylent discs and tablets and whatever that are nutritious for you. So they savor each little bit of food. They savor the lettuce and the jelly and the little bits of beef and what have you. And it's a really, really fun scene. I actually noticed in the credits Edward G. Robinson's name. And I'm like, oh, I recognize that name, but I don't know what for. As it turns out, he plays Saul, Detective Thorn's roommate. This was Edward G. Robinson's very last film, the last thing he ever acted in, and he had a career spanning many, many decades. He was in lots of films and TV shows, and the thing that I probably would recognize him from, if anything at all, would be the 1930s gangster picture Little Caesar, in which he played the lead character. But I haven't seen that film, of course, but I've seen pictures and everything like that. Anyway, of course, you know, towards the end of his career is looking very, very different. But it's a very, very good part for him to have, considering some of the turns the plot takes. I should mention that Joseph Cotten plays William Simonson, the murder victim. He's been in, you know, it's funny, he was actually in a couple of Orson Welles productions, most notably Citizen Kane and the Third Man. And there's actually a theatrical trailer for Citizen Kane in which Orson Welles is introducing a lot of his favorite actors to movie audiences, because up until that point they'd just been on the radio. And the first guy they introduces is Joseph Cotten, who's of course much younger. You know, Citizen Kane came out in 1939, I think, and so in 73 he's much, much older, so he's a veteran actor at this point. He was also in a film, a sort of a psychological thriller called Gaslight, which I saw a bunch of years back. And the other major character in this is someone who they refer to as Furniture. Simonson lives in one of the most affluent apartment buildings in all of New York City. And one of the perks of living there is you have an in-house sex partner that they call Furniture. She comes with the apartment. You live in this apartment. You get her as well. Her name is Cheryl, and she's played by Leigh Taylor-Young. I really wasn't familiar with her at all. I looked up her credits. I hadn't really seen a bunch that of things that she'd been in. She had guest parts in this TV show, that TV show. She'd been in a couple films that I'd seen, like Looker and Jagged Edge in the 80s, but I really didn't recognize her at all. But she's very, very gorgeous, of course, and there's actually a whole sort of cast of women who serve as furniture for those who can afford them, and they're all, you know, very attractive women. So, you know, again with the a sex commodity here, just like in Westworld, with the future being the kind of place where you can just sort of order a woman. Great. Yeah, Edward G. Robinson, I made a note here, he's also in Double Indemnity, which is a classic, and he was also in the Ten Commandments, which of course had Charlton Heston as well. So as the story goes on, Heston's, trying to figure out exactly what's going on with the Soylent Corporation and who wanted Simonson dead and what for. And he doesn't really sort of focus too much on the products that they're producing, the Soylent Red tablets, Soylent Yellow, Soylent Green. And that kind of, the nature of that stuff really isn't revealed until the end. And that was the disappointing thing for me about this movie, was that I was kind of hoping that once that got revealed, then we'd have the third act where, everyone sort of finds out and he spreads the word and they go and take down the company. But that doesn't happen. He sort of, people learn about it. Heston learns about it and another guy learns about it earlier in the movie, but in the audience you're not actually privy to that. You don't actually hear what's being said about it. And it isn't until the very, very end that Heston delivers that classic line, Damn You Dirty Apes. No, that's the wrong movie. Soylent Green is blank, as I said, and shouts it out for everyone in earshot. But the movie ends pretty much right there, so we don't find out what the consequences of that are any. I suppose the novel goes into that a little more detail, but I haven't read it, so I couldn't tell you. But all in all, I like this movie a lot. It was a lot of fun. Really interesting look at a potential future. Another complaint I have about it is that in order to make the air look dirty, they had like this yellow filter over the lens. But it's always the upper half of whatever it is you're seeing. No matter what angle they're shooting at, it's always like the upper half that you have this yellow haze and the rest of it is clean. So it's obviously post-production effect or just a filter, something like that. Yeah, it's very much in keeping with a lot of dystopian futuristic movies in which, you know, things are really bad for most of the population and only for a small percentage are they actually really good and everyone else is suffering. It's unbelievable just how crowded everything is. You know, the streets are crowded. You know, even the staircase in Heston's apartment building, he has to actually like climb over people up and down a staircase in order to get in and out of his building. It's crazy. Yeah, I enjoyed this movie a lot. Thank you, Dr. Hasling, for recommending this to me. I appreciate it very much. I enjoyed seeing it. Finally, it's one of those classic movies that I read a lot about, but never really thought, I'll get around to seeing that one day. Well, now I have, so thank you very much. Appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for watching. And as always, if you have a 1973 movie that you'd like me to watch and do a video on, please leave me a comment or send me a message. But, of course, you should probably look at the link in the description to the playlist, basically, which is all the 73 movies I've done so far, so as, you know, you're not picking one that I've already done. As I said before in my intro video for this little chapter of videos, the next two movies I'm going to be doing are Lucky Luciano, which was a recommendation from 99 Filmo, and Oh Lucky Man. I'm doing a lucky theme there, basically. Oh Lucky Man stars Malcolm McDowell, and it's like 3 hours long or something like that. But I'm looking forward to it because Malcolm McDowell's a lot of fun. So, thank you for watching. Take it easy.